And here we go. We are live. I am back in New York. Um, Joe Chaffee here. Mr.
And Joe
Rayo
here.
right there.
Hey,
The Joe and Joe
yep.
Weather Show. Mr. Rayo, raise yourself a little higher so that we can see the bottom of your chins.
How's that?
Perfect. Perfect. So, strange, kind of strange goings on with everything. Of course, we've got this. You've got the everything is all about the coronavirus, and I noticed today because I just got back from my little adventure down south and drove 21 hours. Got back at 5 a.m. So I've done this before where I've gotten in that late. All I wind up is sleeping maybe about 2 hours. So I was back up at 8 o'clock. I ran out and did errands. Very little traffic. I was very surprised. I was somewhat surprised, but very little traffic. Very few people going about their business. At least out my way. I don't know how things are by you.
I don't know. I haven't stepped out of the house all day, and
So you're in self-containment. Is
I,
that
if there's any bright spot to being unemployed, I guess it is that since I don't have to go anywhere, I might as well just stay right here.
Well, that's true. That's quite true. Um, yeah, it's we're going to talk about weather. I just kind of want to touch on this because it's sort of it's on everybody's uh, front and center. How could it not be? But just kind of surprised last night because they actually canceled the newscast coming out of WCBS. I saw that I saw the story about the fact that they had two cases there and they evacuated the building and all the rest of it. I was wondering what they were going to do as far as their newscasts were concerned.
Well, the CBS has an affiliate out on Long Island where you are, WLNY Channel 55. On most cable services, it's also Channel 10. Where I am, on my Optimum system, it's Channel 79.
Right.
But they do a 9 o'clock newscast, Joe. Between 9 and 10 o'clock, there's a 1 hour newscast in a rather arcane looking studio with a white brick wall and a plasma screen, and it's done with a newscaster, and also Lonnie Quinn does the weather. And I think what they did last night, after they evacuated earlier on in the evening, they simply played that newscast on CBS. Now today is most interesting. If you watch the CBS newscast today at 5 o'clock, 5 to 6:30, the local newscast, it was I believe it was done from Los Angeles. They simply
Really?
they simply put, because the news anchor, I think his first name was DeMarco. I think his name is DeMarco Morgan, and
Hmm.
I looked him up, and he is a news anchor at KCBS Channel 2, Los Angeles. So what I think they did was
They must have fed them their scripts.
they sent them the scripts, yeah,
Right.
and they put behind DeMarco, they put the skyline of New York. They didn't have to do anything with 2 and CBS because they're Channel 2
Because
out
they're
of Long
two out
Island.
of LA, yeah, KCBS.
And what they did
Oh.
was they had the news. DeMarco Morgan was the newscaster. I didn't get the name of the young lady who was doing sports for them, but I presume that she also was out in Los Angeles. And then when they went to weather, they had the weather lab, the mobile weather lab, with Lonnie Quinn, and Lonnie was reporting the weather from Westport, Connecticut, which happens to be, I believe, where he lives. So. Um,
They a lot of I was watching CNBC for most of the day today. Of course, that's the other big story with all of this going on in the financial world coming collapsing around everybody. But they actually structured their shows too, where they had their anchors, which are normally they'll have all three anchors at the New York Stock Exchange or at the Nasdaq, but instead they had them all in different locations.
mhm.
With only one anchor in maybe in that one location, and the others were just kind of in different spots, just so that to keep what is it being called, that social distancing or something.
Right.
All right, so it's an odd thing, Joe. It's just kind of unusual. This is new. This is nothing that's ever happened to, growing up. We never had anything like this, and
No, of course not.
certainly this is the first time. I think for most people of our generation, uh, this is the very first time anything like this has happened. So anyhow, we have some severe weather tonight. I thought we'd touch upon it because last week while I was away, it was the one day we didn't do the live stream. They had the big tornado in in Nashville, in Tennessee, and that area of the U.S. is kind of getting into some severe weather tonight. So I'm going to bring up SPC's stuff here momentarily. Just let me. I got my now that I'm back here. I have two monitors, so it's a lot easier to maneuver. But I just got to get used to it again. First, there you go. I got to find the screen. So here, let me bring up SPC's map. Two working tornado watches up, Mr. Rayo, right now, believe it or not. We have one that looked like it was just touching Nashville, and then that part of the tornado watch is done. And now the second tornado watch that's up, and I got SPC's map. This went, by the way, from being a marginal risk to an enhanced risk,
Hmm.
which kind of caught me a little by surprise. Uh, I thought maybe they might, when I was looking at this yesterday, I thought maybe that this might wind up getting upgraded to a slight. But I didn't anticipate it getting upgraded to enhanced. But it looks fairly busy on the radar here, and these two working watches are going to go at least up until midnight tonight.
And you mentioned, yeah, it looks like the first one, the lead watch, has been migrating, if you will, further to the east and out of the Memphis area. And it's a pretty broad area of activity down across the Tennessee and into the northern sections of the Mississippi River Valley. And it looks like we here in the tri-state area may have a chance at hearing a few rumbles of thunder or maybe a flash or two of lightning come probably around daybreak or shortly thereafter tomorrow. So maybe folks who are heading out to work or to those schools that are open tomorrow, you will have some rough weather in terms of showery rains and possibly heavy rainfall for a little while, as the frontal zone, the same one that's affecting the regions right now down in Kentucky and Tennessee and those areas, the same frontal zone will be moving through here probably sometime around midday tomorrow.
Let me remind everybody because we haven't done this in a while. So if you're watching this, it is 7:11 Eastern time, and excuse me, 7:11 Eastern time on March 12th. So if you're watching this on a replay, obviously your radars and satellites are dated, and so are your watches and warnings. So you want to be sure you get the latest weather information by going to your local National Weather Service office, and you can ask weather page, and you can access that by going to weather.gov. So this is Tornado Watch number 48, which is valid until midnight Central Daylight Time. And it's kind of there's some heavy thunderstorms going on right now. I got the radar here from the Nashville radar, centered on Nashville, and there's nothing nearby. The storms are all on the Kentucky side, and those little yellow boxes that are popping up showing us where there are current severe thunderstorm warnings. There look like there might have been a tornado warning up just at the very beginning of this loop that disappeared. So that cell has come and gone, but there have already been reports of a few tornadoes. And on the SPC's map, let me just bring this back up, Joe. You got a very, very good setup. There's one other tornado watch that's working right now, and I want to bring this up too. So this is the one. This is tornado watch number 47, and that covers Arkansas, a small portion of southeastern Kansas, a small portion of northwestern Tennessee, westernmost Kentucky, southwesternmost Illinois, and southeastern Missouri. You're seeing some scattered cells developing there now, and those are going to be moving to the east. The overall radar is actually not too shabby looking. You've got a big cluster of heavy downpours and thunderstorms moving across Kentucky, and then you've got these other stronger cells setting up in what looks like the beginnings of a line that's going to be running through Arkansas. Uh, kind of, Tim. This is the time of year where we're going to start seeing more and more of this stuff.
Yes, I guess we are we ready to throw in the towel for snow lovers and just say the heck with it, it's not going to happen, or
I thought we I thought we threw in the towel
well,
weeks ago. Are we throwing it in again?
I guess we are.
There is there is one thing I do want to point out though with regards to that, because a few people, that we've been, jumping. I'm going to get to this a little bit later, but a few people have been jumping up and down about the teleconnections right now, and I want to address that because I don't think they're bullish, and for one specific reason. But we'll get to that in a minute. I just want to wrap up all this stuff with the severe weather. I was taking a look at the ripeness of the atmosphere, Joe. There's a sliver of dew points in the middle 60s with temperatures in the 70s that has kind of forced its way across Arkansas and into Tennessee. Oddly enough, the dew points to the south of Tennessee, you go down into Alabama, you go down into uh, Mississippi, you've got temperatures in the upper 70s and low 80s, and dew mid 50s to around 60. The air to the south is actually drier than the air to the north. This tropical air is coming in from the west southwest, from the Pacific side, so it's a little odd. It's not coming straight out of the Gulf of Mexico. It's coming in more from it's more toward the north, to the northwest, than it is to the southeast. So it's a little unusual.
and yeah, I'm looking at right now on the map here. Yeah, many places. At one spot in central Mississippi, it looks like 80 degrees, 55 dew point. That's
Well,
not bad.
no, not at all. I mean, that's actually kind of comfortable. But then
Yeah,
you go up into Tennessee, and you look at these temp dew point spreads as soon as the map decides to plot them again. 73, 63.
yeah,
Uh, Nashville right now, 73, 61. You push that up into southern Kentucky, you're also low 70s with dew points in the low 60s. So uh, I'll bring it up on the satellite, and you see what's happening. You got all that stuff that's down in the southwest. There's this upper low of Southern California, so you're getting all this moisture that's crossing from Baja into New Mexico and West Texas, and that's kind of shooting over the top. You see how those high clouds are just kind of streaming over the top there.
right.
That's where your tropical air your tropical air is, and the air to the south is actually dry.
Yeah,
Very bizarre.
yeah, indeed.
And by the way, your mechanism for our showers and thunderstorms, if you look up to the north, Joe, you can see there's a fairly well-defined shortwave there swinging into the western Great Lakes. And that's going to be the trigger mechanism to take some of this tropical moisture and try to shoot it up. You think you're going to get warm sector tonight up by
I'm
you?
not, where I am thinking that we're going to see temperatures out ahead of the warm front slowly rise. I think evening temperatures are going to be in the low and mid 40s, and then we'll begin to see after midnight temperatures climb through the 40s, maybe get to or close to 50. And yeah, well, obviously, if the warm front comes through and we get into the warm sector before the cold front comes in tomorrow during the early morning hours, that's the reason that we may possibly see a little convection, some thundery weather, and some brief bursts of heavy activity. But again, that's all going to be dependent on where that warm front is. And more often than not, it seems, at least where I live here in Putnam County, that warm front always seems to sit just off to my south, and we never seem to get into that nice, juicy, warm wedge, if you will.
Well, look, I just moved the surface map up with the 7 o'clock temperatures. It's in the by me. I'm in the low 40s. Okay, it's barely 43 here, and
Right.
it's low 40s in Connecticut. It's mid and upper. It's mid 40s up by you, and it's mid 40s to low 50s across much of New Jersey into Pennsylvania. You have to go down south of Washington D.C. To start getting into temperatures that are in the upper 50s and low 60s. So that warm surge, and then looking at the wind directions, they're all northeast and east, even down into Chesapeake Bay and back up into western Maryland. They start to turn more southeast. you really got to go pretty far south to see where that warm front's taking shape. Now, that may not make a difference later on tonight because when that low swings around, that front can actually, this marine layer that we seem to be in is not really all that thick. So it may not really take much, I should say deep. So it may not take very much to push that warm front all the way up. I think it's going to make it, at least to me, and possibly even get close to you.
Yeah, and tomorrow I think what we're going to see is that we'll start the first half of the day will probably be a lot of clouds, patchy areas of fog, a few hours, especially between let's say 7 and 9 o'clock, of some showery rains, a little rumble or two of thunder. Once the cold front moves on by, and it should move on quickly by about midday tomorrow, we should see some rather rapid clearing. Now that the sun is not setting until 7 o'clock at night, we may have 3 or 4 hours of sunshine tomorrow combined with a gusty west wind. Compression effects that should make for inland areas rise well into the 60s to even touch perhaps 70, I think, tomorrow. Not out of the question. But the poor folks who live near the sound shore of Westchester and also across the south end of Long Island, Joe, may be stuck with temperatures more like mid and low 50s, even in spite of the fact that the sun comes out later in the day tomorrow.
Right. I got the watches and warnings map up for for nationwide because we actually do have some winter weather that is setting up in the northwest in northwestern Montana. We have a fairly large area of winter storm warnings up there and some winter storm watches that are up as well for that area. Where do we go? There we go. And also for California in the Sierra Nevadas are all under a winter storm watch and on up into northwestern California. Flash flood watches and flash flood warnings with this upper low that's coming in to Southern California and the surface low that's with it, producing some heavy rains there, and hence the flash flooding, and also winter storm warnings in parts of southern Utah, and a small sliver of counties in southwestern Colorado. And then we've got this other patch of advisories and warnings up through parts of northwest Nebraska, northwest Kansas and western Nebraska, and a few of the easternmost counties of Colorado. The yellows you see further east, those are your working tornado watches. You have the green, that sliver of green, flash flood watches for southern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and northeastern Kentucky. And that really kind of sums it all up as far as the watches and warnings are concerned. So we've got a cold front coming, and Joe, this low that's sitting up well northeast of Lake Superior, midway between Lake Superior and James Bay, this 987 low by tomorrow morning is the same low that models back a little bit over a week ago, if you remember, were showing us a low off the Virginia coast and snow, ridiculous amounts of snow being generated. Another case, and we've said this before, another case of where the overall pattern was totally against anything happening. This was not going to be any different than anything else we've seen all winter long. So it was a waste of energy to get all worked up about it. And you see the heavy precip that the GFS's radar presentation extends down from upstate New York across the Hudson Valley, down the Hudson Valley through New Jersey, and then off the New Jersey coast by tomorrow morning. So I think we're going to see some lightning and hear a few rumbles of thunder with this before it goes through.
It'll be exciting, won't it?
Yeah.
They give people something to talk about on the way to work tomorrow.
Other than the coronavirus.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
now take a look at this. This is kind of interesting because going into Friday and Friday night, you got this first low pulls out, and actually there is a fair amount of cold air. We have this big cold high that is building in the western half of Canada. This is part of that teleconnection development with regards to the East Pacific Oscillation going very negative, and that is usually favorable for cold air to spread across southern Canada and into the eastern part of the United States. And of course, you've got all this rain and snow by Friday night back into the southern plains and into the the southern half of the Rockies. So if you were to look at this at face value, you would say, hey, maybe we would wind up getting something out of this over the weekend as it moves eastward. But guess what? It weakens and falls apart as it gets shoved to the south and east.
It's I said a couple of days ago on my channel, Joe Rayo Weather, which of course, if any of you are not subscribed, please do so on YouTube. On the Joe Rayo Weather channel discussion a couple of days ago, I pointed out that there's a little ripple in the. I don't know if you want to bring up the 500 level
I'm doing that right now.
height anomaly, but there's a little ripple or a little disturbance that's unfortunately rippling into a broad zone of generally high pressure. And there's nothing for that little ripple to work on or work
Right,
with.
here's the ripple. I'm going to circle it here on the map so everybody can see. It's actually, Joe, right now, for tomorrow morning, it's a very well defined upper low that moves into Southern California. Uh,
Right,
so just from that starting point, you say, oh, that's not a half bad looking shortwave that's moving east. But you're right. The system that's in the northeast, this upper trough in the northeast, of course, is lifting out, and you can start to see the upper ridge as you've described. And also, while that's all going on, there's something else that's happening too. You've got this another trough that's digging down off the west coast. It actually weakens the system that you're referring to
right,
coming out of Southern California. And yeah, it goes into this building ridge position that's going to be along in the eastern half of the United States. And by the time you get to Saturday afternoon, you can barely find it.
right.
I mean, it's gone. I could barely by Sunday morning. It's barely a kink in there.
Yeah, it's kind of like that system is coming to the end of a marathon, and how some runners sometimes they're getting close to the end and they just flop down and they die. This little kink, as you referred to it, again has nothing to latch on to. And so it just ripples into this broad zone of high pressure, flattens out, and that's it. I mean, if there was at least some kind of a trough, let's say over the Great Lakes, to grab onto it and maybe fling it eastward, and maybe if it went, negatively tilted, I mean, then yeah, there might be some hope for some precipitation and maybe even with enough cold air, some snow, but it just doesn't have anything. And so as a result, I think what we're going to see here locally is a lot of clouds build in late in the day on Saturday, kind of a cloud filled night Saturday night. And then on Sunday, as the building ridge of high pressure asserts itself, all of those clouds get shunted off to the south, and Sunday turns out to be a beautifully clear, dry, sunny day.
Right. Then, of course, after that goes out, you've got the high that moves across southeastern Canada and then finds its way into the Gulf of Maine, which, of course, means that we're going to start to see a return flow. And here comes the next cold front with rain on Tuesday, maybe a little bit of snow way up into New England, but it doesn't look all that impressive. And then that goes out. Then another high comes in, and that goes out with another front and another low that heads up towards the Great Lakes as we head into the long range. And guess what? We're now at the first day of spring.
Yep.
Okay?
The
And
earliest the earliest spring, I think I've made mention of this, the earliest spring in 124 years. And it's not due to it's due primarily to the fact that in the year 2000 we observed a leap day. It was a leap year in 2000 because it was a century year equally divisible by 400. So we made that a leap year. Had it not been equally divisible by 400, we wouldn't have had a leap year that year in 2000, just like we did not have a leap year in the year 1900. And so spring would have come on the 20th of March. Instead, this year, for the first time in our lifetime, Joe, it is going to come on the 19th. I mean, we grew up with thinking that, spring or, observing spring on the 21st of March. Then it kind of fell back a ways into the 20th of March. And now here we are next Thursday night, 11:50 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're going to be observing astronomical spring on March the 19th.
wow, St. Joe's Day.
That's right.
By the way, with regards to the longer term, we mentioned in our last live stream how the GFS went from splitting the polar vortex. We were talking about maybe some kind of late uh, uh, chill down maybe as we get toward the end of March or of April. We've seen that from time to time over the last 10 years or so, where we've gotten these late season extensions of winter. And the model backed off from that. Just kind of looking at this up at the stratosphere, there's a major league warming that's going to be going on in the stratosphere. All it really does is just kind of stretches the polar vortex out. It is weakening as we head toward the end of the month and going into the month of April, which is something that you would expect it to do anyway. You probably would have expected to see the weakening begin a little bit sooner, but nonetheless, the weakening is there. However, I really, as I've been kind of leading to the idea that it's just all too little, too late. And I don't see anything here that's going to change my mind about that. At least, at least from what I've seen so far.
And I bet you it's going to be ironic that, well, now because of the coronavirus, baseball has announced that they're going to start the season no earlier than 2 weeks after what they originally had set for opening day on the 26th of March. How crazy is that? I mean, it's almost, like late winter in
Yeah,
some. And the irony, I think, is going to be that the 26th of March is going to come and we're going to have those first 2 weeks, beautiful spring like weather. And you say to yourself, boy, they could be playing baseball at Citi Field or Yankee Stadium, but they're not because of the virus situation. And in a way, maybe that's actually a silver lining because I've always felt that baseball is starting the season much too early. And now, at least with a 2 week delay, it's going to be starting more in line of what it used to be back when you and I were growing up, back in the middle stages of April.
correct.
So,
Totally correct. Here's what just go. I want to go to that what I was saying before about the teleconnections. So here is this is what the teleconnections were showing this morning, and of course the Pacific North America index is strongly negative, stays negative, although it comes off those strong readings around the St. Patrick's Day to the first day of spring, and then goes strongly negative again. This is going to favor severe weather, by the way. This is going to favor severe weather developing in the areas where you would expect severe weather to develop this time of year, in the plains, in in the Gulf states, and up into the maybe the middle Mississippi Valley, the lower portions of the Ohio Valley. The East Pacific Oscillation goes off the wall negative over the next 5 days. And it stays very strongly negative through most of the forecast period. So this is usually a signal. When you see the EPO strongly negative, it usually means colder than normal temperatures that get to spread out across Canada and come into the eastern United States. The problem is that the North Atlantic Oscillation, which is how it's been pretty much since the middle part of December, is still strongly positive over the next 2 weeks. So that means that all this cold air that you see building in Canada is going to come in, and it's going to, and I put cold air in quotes, by the way, because of the time of year.
right.
Our normals are going up, but because there's the flow, the North Atlantic Oscillation is so positive, you're seeing this very fast west to east flow across southern Canada to off the to the Canadian Maritimes, and then out straight across the Atlantic. That particular element of the upper air pattern has changed, has not changed at all for the last 3 months, and
No,
and it's just no good. So those teleconnections are kind of useless. To have all that negative EPO doesn't do you any good if you don't have something that can at least hold that cold air in, and it's just not there.
right. It's one of these little driblets of cold weather that we've seen that come in and then very quickly move out over, as you said, the last 3 months. For the most part, it's been like, as I like to use the term, bottled up. That polar vortex sitting over the top of the world, just bottling up the vast majority of cold weather. A good point is that the ice levels have been higher this particular winter season as opposed to recent years because of all that cold air staying up where it is. But for those of you who are snow lovers and winter weather lovers, it hasn't been much of a winter to write home about.
Correct. And by the way, I'm putting up the snowfall forecast map where we've got all these winter storm watches and warnings up in the western part of the United States. So you can see that this part of the U.S. is going to be pretty busy with some heavy snowfalls, particularly up in the northern Rockies and also in the Sierra Nevadas. We've got that stripe of yellow, which is 30 inches plus, being indicated in some of those mountain areas. They know how to do snow out there in the West. They really do. Uh,
Well, you know what they say about the state of Utah. In fact, I think it's on their license plate. The greatest snow on earth.
yes, it is. Snow actually on the order of 3 to 6 inches over much of Nebraska, which isn't too shabby. Mounts lighten up on either side as you move up to the north into the Dakotas and to the south into Kansas and to the southwest in Colorado. Some pockets of heavier snows in some of the higher terrain. Well, most of Colorado is higher terrain, but you get the idea. West of Denver, some spots, particularly southwest of Denver, seeing some heavier snows and a little bit of snow indicated for parts of northern Maine and northernmost New Hampshire, and back up into northernmost Wisconsin. This is through Sunday 8 p.m. By the way, in terms of the Weather Service digital forecast. So I am going to bring you full screen, Mr. Rayo. So
Yes.
just hang on 1 second. So make sure your chin is available for viewing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it is. Um, so give me 1 second here to move a few things back and forth. Let's see. Let's get.
By the way, Joe, you want to feel old?
Go ahead.
Guess who turned 70 today?
Uh, I have no idea who.
Timmy from Lassie, John Provost.
Oh, by the way, that you did remind me about turning 70. I did see that someone that you and I grew up listening to, probably, I think for me, I'm going to say there's probably the first uh, person that I remember in terms of listening to weather on radio, the passing of Gordon Barnes.
Yes, he passed away. Actually, he passed away in December. But Craig Allen sent me the obituary about a week or so ago, and I posted it on my Facebook page. And yeah, from about the mid or late 60s to the mid 70s, when he actually left New York and went to Washington, D.C., Gordon Barnes on News Radio 88 and also on WCBS Channel 2 was a guy we always used to watch. He was a guy who used to be big into long range forecasting. He used to tell people like Ben Farnsworth and Pat Parson on CBS News Radio, get your crayon out. I'm going to tell you list all the storms we're going to have for the upcoming month. He seemed to have this idea that he was able to predict the weather weeks and weeks and weeks in advance, which I never really kept a record. Um, Gordon Barnes claimed that he was able to forecast the Lindsay snowstorm weeks and months in advance. But like I said, I never kept score. But he was an interesting guy on radio and was one of the guys who attracted us or pulled us into the science of and hobby of meteorology and weather back in the day when we were just wee little tots.
Yep, that's kind of where I was going with all this. So with respect to my connection, that was I know you did this with the same thing I did, and that is you knew when all the when weather the times that weather was coming up on the radio, so that you would catch you'd catch Gordon Barnes would come up after the 6 minute CBS top of the hour news, so he would be on at 4:06. Then you
Yeah,
would switch over to winds. You'd hope that they were running a few seconds behind, and you would get AccuWeather at 4:07 or 4:08. If you were lucky, you got it there. If you missed it, you'd catch it maybe at 4:20. Come back to Gordon Barnes, then go to AccuWeather's discussion at
I used
4:35.
I used to listen to out of town stations too.
Oh yeah.
WTIC in Hartford had the Travelers Weather Service,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to listen to them. And I even used to listen to was probably the only kid in the Bronx who knew who Don Kent was. Don Kent was like the Frank Field of Boston,
Yes.
and I used to listen to him on WBZ out of Boston. Yeah, we were kind of crazy, right? We used to twist the dial and listen to all these stations, both locally and out of town, especially when a big storm came. But I got to tell you something, Joe. That was the exciting part of getting into weather. Was a big storm approaching. You listen to all these stations and you listen to what one forecaster is
Right.
saying, and you
I
had your map out, and
Yep. I agree. I agree. You and I, we both basically did the same thing. By the way,
yeah.
Scott Briller, thanks for hitting super chat tonight. The chairman. I also have we have a Briller Jeopardy question here, but he says you guys are the only entertainment left in town. And you know what? You can watch us safely in as we practice social distancing.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, even look, Lonnie Quinn. Lonnie Quinn tonight. He actually did, I think, only one forecast tonight, Joe. He was at as I said, they had the CBS Weather Lab in Westport, Connecticut, and Lonnie was just doing a very general type of weather discussion. I don't even think he was able to see what was on the screen, and I think what was on the screen was actually prepared by the folks in Los Angeles. It was a very strange
yeah.
type of telecast tonight.
Yeah, it's it is strange. And by the way, just to be clear, I'm not making light of the situation with regards to the coronavirus. It is it is quite serious. But sometimes I have a bit of a dark streak and a bit of a as far as my sense of humor goes. So one of the ways that I cope is to try to find some levity in a situation. So don't misinterpret, please.
Right.
People tend to jump to conclusions, especially in these touchy social media days. That social with social media, I'm amazed. By the way, Joe, and I think you'll agree with me. Uh, Hold on, before we even do that, let's do Briller Jeopardy before I forget. So here you go. You ready?
Yes,
And
sir.
then we'll come back to what I was about to say here. So the record for most consecutive days with at least 1 inch of snow cover in Central Park.
Wow. Okay. That I'm trying to think of a particular winter where we both had lots of snow, but also prolonged or protracted spell of cold weather to maintain that snow cover. Um, uh,
What is the record for the most consecutive days with at least 1 inch of snow cover on the ground at Central Park?
I'm going to say 15.
15 days?
15.
It's 56.
56 days?
Yes, 56.
That sounds like up here.
1947 or 1948. So whatever fell in the after Christmas blizzard of 47
Probably stuck around for a
stuck
while.
on the ground, stuck around for quite a while, 56 days.
I can't even imagine something like that in New York today, sticking around for that long. And 56 days, that's wow. That's incredible. That's almost 2 months.
Yes. By the way, those teleconnections that I showed you today, thanks, Scott, for pointing it out, but it really doesn't change very much because in terms of what the upper air pattern is, I think they're about the same. These were actually from 3 days ago, from March 9th. But I can tell you this, from just judging from what the upper air looks like, it's pretty close to this.
Yep.
Excuse the fact that I didn't catch the date because I'm running on fumes right now, and you got to be impressed because I'm actually able to complete sentences. I'm speaking coherently even though I'm only on 2 hours sleep. Because I drove with my friend, we drove back from Fort Pierce, Florida. We left at about 9 yesterday morning, and we arrived here at 5 a.m. So we drove almost 21 hours.
Good Lord.
We stopped to eat, stretch, and you know,
Be merry.
go to the right and go to the little boys' room. So yeah, but it's a long drive, and it just wiped me out as far as when I got home. Only got to sleep like 2 hours. So no, just to go back to what I was touching upon, with the social media thing, and this is something that obviously 10 years ago, 15 years ago, really wasn't it wasn't around 15 years ago or more. But one of the things that has amazed me is the fact that I never realized how many people are expert in medicine, law, politics, economics, um, all at once. I mean, they must have started going to school by the time they from when they were in utero, and I mean, it's astounding to me. So you got it's I don't know. It's just that because you've got there's been that this one group that basically says that this is all some kind of hoax. Then you have this whole other group that's saying that the end of the world is coming, and you're trying to sort all this out, and ah, it's crazy. It's just crazy. It's made dealing with all of this, I think, a lot worse.
Well, that's why they have these experts come on, the Sanjay Gupas and the Dr. Lepook on CBS.
Yeah, but
Because I mean, I don't think you would want to see Nora O'Donnell tackle a very difficult medical question.
no, no, I know, or it's a tough. It is very tough, and you want to make sure you're getting your information from getting information from the CDC and all the rest of it. But it's just too much. It's out there. It's just coming at you in all different directions, and of course the news coverage has been nonstop. It's very very hard to get away from it. But that being said, you and I both have mothers who are in their mid and late 80s.
Right.
So it is concerning. I mean, it is concerning, um, and everybody just kind of I think just use common sense through all of this, and we'll see. We just have to take it a day at a time. I don't know.
Uh,
I just find this to be a very very odd time.
we're in the sandwich generation. We're taking care of our own families, but now we're also taking care of the people who took care of us a long, long time ago. And you're right, it is a little nerve wracking when you have parents that are in their mid and late 80s. And my wife, her father is going to be, I believe, 83 or 84. So he's up there. So you have to be concerned about these people, especially with a situation like the coronavirus. And the thing that bothers me is that even when you ask the experts a specific question, they're kind of couching their answers because I think even they don't know.
No, I agree. Well,
The
that's
effect.
just it. No one seems to know. And then, of course, you have what's going on in Italy, which is, uh, somewhat, I would guess that you might use the word dire with regards to what's been happening up in the northern part of Italy. The whole country is shut down. It's a very, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. You see it being reflected daily in the financial markets, the way they've been selling off so hard. I mean, I don't know how your 201k, if your 401k is probably now a 201k. Yesterday I would have said a 301k, and
You're
tomorrow
more,
who
more,
knows? It may just be a
oh,
K.
Joe, you're more into this than I am in terms of the money situation. I mean, we're close to like 20,000 now on the Dow. Is it possible that we could have 10 more days like we've just had and the Dow actually goes down to like zero or close to zero?
Well, no. I mean, there's the problem that what it really boils down to is we're getting a little bit of everything on the show tonight, but what it really boils down to is this: it's uncertainty. Okay, when you're not certain about something, uh, the natural reflex action is to secure whatever it is you've got. Okay, and I'm saying that in a general sense. So in terms of how stock traders work, when they don't, if you have certainty, if you have an idea of when, how this virus is going to progress, when is it going to peak, when is it going to start to diminish, and the impact that it's going to have on earnings, because at the end of the day, stock prices are a reflection of how much a company makes. Okay, when a company when companies can't when you can't see what your profits are going to be because you know your business is basically shutting down for 3 months, uh, you're going to sell that, your stock's going to go down. So until you get some clarity, people are just going to sell. And I think that's what you're seeing right now. Now, at some point, you're going to get a very wicked snapback. My feeling, no guarantees from the management, but at some point, and I would think it would have to be, it's going to be soon because the selling has been so unrelenting. There is going to probably be a really vicious snapback rally because the rubber band has just been pulled so far to an extreme. You've got stuff in terms of technicals that you and I work with technicals when we work with our weather maps. Stock charts kind of work in the same way. You've got stocks trading at 3 and 4 standard deviations below the normal trading range, and that just doesn't last long. So at some point, it's going to snap back. But it's just a very, very uncertain time.
I don't know if any of our viewers have done this. I mean, I've spoken to um, a couple of different in the last week or so, actually, and a couple of different financial experts who have been watching our money here, and they've been saying, don't do anything, just keep everything the way it is right now, because in the short term, yeah, it's going bad. But echoing what you just said, they feel very confident. I mean, not just confident, but very confident that it's all going to snap back sometime down the road. And in fact, there was a guy on one of the TV channels. I don't know if it was CNBC or CNN or whatever. He said, take a ball, throw it in the ocean. The ball is going to go into the ocean. It's going to go down. Eventually, it's going to reach a point where it's going to hit bottom, and then very quickly after it hits bottom, it's going to go straight back up again because that's the way.
Well, as long as as long as there is a predictable the way this whole thing plays out, as long as there's clarity in terms of when everything peaks and when the cases start to decrease, because it will do that. It's going to peak and then it's going to decrease. Then if you can sit back and figure out, okay, my business is going to be shut down for 2 weeks, and then I can start to resume, getting things back to normal, and then people will start behaving and going back to their normal behavior. So it's a bit of a shaky time, but we're all in it. We're all going through it together. So that is a positive, albeit at a social distance.
Right. To
Social
see what you've gotten
distancing.
in, to see what you've gotten in this one 50-minute broadcast. You got your weather. You also got financial observations here, and talk about the coronavirus. So you got an action-packed night tonight, regardless of whether the weather is going to be
Well, as
action.
Scott Briller said, we're the only game in town.
Yes.
And
Yes,
actually, when you
yeah, we
think,
should have, we should have a private phone line so that we could put people on speakerphone and take phone calls.
well, you know what? That's something that we could work on. I don't think we even need a private phone line. I think we could maneuver it through what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Another Skype channel. Let me just do a little bit of house cleaning. Uh,
Yes.
for my Patreon members, uh, I put up a post. Tim Veltman and Johnny Quest set up a chat on Discord. Okay, and it's free. The link to that I put it up in Patreon so that you can join on Discord, and it's basically a non-stop chat. So if you've got the link, and I'll send you the link, Joe, so that you can download the Discord app on your seldom used iPhone, and then you can you can you can be part of it too. But you can use it, by the way. You can not only you're talking to to us or to me whenever I have an opportunity to get on it. But when you're talking amongst each other, you can share maps, you can share information. It works like a regular chat, so it's very good because it's just the Patreon members. So
Whatever happened to the Joe Rayo, the Joe and Joe Facebook We Love channel?
I don't know. It's on there somewhere. It's on there somewhere. The Discord thing is good because that just kind of if you've got the link and you just download the Discord app, you're just you're good. So if you haven't checked the Patreon today, I just put that link up there. So be sure to do. And if you're not a member of Patreon, you can join. It's a subscription platform. It's just $2 a month, and basically, it's the price of a cup of coffee. Gives you weather all the time or most of the time, and it's you get stuff that on there that I don't put up on my other sources, my websites, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera.
You're the king of all media. We all know that, Joe.
Yes, but right now I'm beginning to fade. I can feel my
Right.
ears turning purple inside my headsets.
So why don't you just let's call it quits, and you can get a good night's sleep, and you'll be all set to go tomorrow. Except you will be awoken tomorrow morning by the thunderstorms that'll be rumbling across Long Island.
Well, I hope so because you know what? I predicted him, and so did
Okay.
you. All right, so have a great night, Mr. Rayo. Thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate it. And I guess you and I will be back tomorrow night since we haven't done many live streams in the last 2 weeks.
Where am I going?
I
Where are
know
you going with this? Right?
exactly, exactly. So we'll see you tomorrow night. Everybody have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Night.